Today's video, we're covering every G.I. Joe Classified series figure released in 2022. Without any further ado, let's begin. Hello, this is Soundout here, and welcome to my G.I. Joe Classified series rundown for 2022. For those unaware, every year I do a series of videos called The Rundown, and we go over a previous year's toy line. So for example, I started doing this with Marvel Legends, and I do Marvel Legends every year, and I've started doing G.I. Joe Classified since the line started, as well as Power Rangers Lightning Collection. And then this year we're also mixing it up with some Transformers to see if there's any interest in that kind of video. But you want to subscribe and hit the notification bell because there are more coming. G.I. Joe is the first up this year. And if you haven't seen the previous rundowns for 2020 and 2021, by all means go back and check those out. This is a continuation of that series. But in terms of 2022 for G.I. Joe, there were 31 figures released, of which I got 26. It's the highest percentage of owned versus release of any line I collect, because I really like it. So in terms of the actual releases, for those wondering what qualifies, I have two rules. First of all, if it's a retail release item, within the United States, I had to release at 2 retailers. This doesn't necessarily mean in-store anymore. I've completely ruled that out. We're talking about online retailers. So for example, Wave 10, which featured Zarana and Dusty, it shipped from GameStop and Amazon, so it qualified the whole wave. It also, I think, shipped by Pulse before the end of the year, but it had to be within 2022. If a figure gets pushed that was meant to be 2022, became 2023, it's not on here. And that's just how it works. And then for exclusives, the exclusive has to stock at the retailer it's at. I had to do this because of issues with the Power Rangers and Transformers lines with Walgreens exclusives, where they didn't actually show up at Walgreens, they just showed up on Hasbro Pulse, so it doesn't qualify them for release in that year. So in general, G.I. Joe doesn't have that problem, but that's the two rules we follow. Now the line as a whole did have kind of a weird year, because the first two figures released, the B.A.T and the Alley Viper, technically came out in 2021. There were some influencers that got them early from Hasbro, and then there was also early stockings at Walmart. But they were intended for a 2022 release. They didn't really have a pre-order window as much as an in-stock window, and they just appeared. It was kind of a strange thing, but it was a neat thing to try with army builders, because they were essentially sending out full cases of B.A.Ts and Alley Vipers, which worked out pretty good, I think, for everyone. Then the next wave didn't ship until June or July of 2022, which was the Storm Shadow wave, and that was because the G.I. Joe team was attempting a strategy to collect all the stock in shipments before sending it to any stores. They were holding it in the Hasbro warehouses. And that seemed to be an experiment they tried, and I think it was cool because everybody got the wave at the same time, and it wasn't so surprising. But that didn't seem to follow for the Stalker and Twins wave or the Zarana and Dusty wave, because those just start doing the usual thing of they show up at one store first and they show up at another, that sort of thing. So it was a good attempt, and I think it was kind of cool, but I don't know if it was logistically possible for the future. And then in general, the line had what has sort of been hitting all toy lines, where the new shipping methods are getting the new items out at the same time the old shipping methods are finally getting the old items out. So it was a bit clogged in the back half of the year. From July to December, we got a majority of figures. Prior to July, we only had, I think, 5 figures released, and then the other 26 came out in the back half of the year, which was pretty intense, but it still was paced out. It wasn't like they all dropped at once. They kind of spread themselves out fairly neatly, which was kind of nice to see because it made it a little bit easier to collect. I didn't ever feel overwhelmed or getting flooded by G.I. Joe like I did for other brands such as Marvel Legends. More on that in the next Marvel Legends video. But in terms of the actual releases as well, what kind of worked in their favor, by holding off that Storm Shadow wave, it meant that that wave didn't ship till after the Cobra Hiss HasLab finished. Which means a lot of us who are G.I. Joe collectors were like, well, let's just get a Cobra Hiss, because there's nothing else going on at the moment since we were told that that wave was coming later. And honestly, that kind of worked out. I think that maybe having a gap in releases to put up a HasLab is a smart strategy, and hopefully Hasbro noticed that. But in general, I think the year was pretty good for Classified. 31 figures, most of them unique characters, really great stuff that we're going to look at, of course, in depth figure by figure. The last thing that happened this year was the conclusion of Larry Hama's G.I. Joe comic book run. Started in 1982 with issue 1 and ending in 2022 with issue 300. Holy cow. This was an amazing run. Now, there was a period of time where, it was originally at Marvel Comics and the run ended at issue 155 at Marvel, and IDW picked it up with 156 in like 2011-ish, and they basically let Larry Hama write whatever story he wanted, and he has been having a blast. You can tell just by reading the comic, it's been great. But it has reached its conclusion with issue 300, as the IDW G.I. Joe comic book license has expired, along with the Transformers one. Now, we were told in January 2022 the license would be going to another publisher. It's January 2023, and we've heard nothing about who that new publisher is, and we have comic book solicitations up through April 2023 starting up, and still no word on what happened. And I keep asking myself, why did they take the license away from IDW if they didn't have somebody lined up right away to take it? Because that just seems short-sighted. Now, will G.I. Joe get to issue 301 when a new publisher picks it up? Who knows? But for the meantime, 300 is the final issue in Larry Hama's G.I. Joe run. I just wanted to highlight that as part of the year's events. But this also means Classified Series in 2023, at least until there's a new comic or something, is media-free, which means they pretty much are just going to do whatever they want. And in fact, unlike any other Hasbro brand, they're doing a different type of reveal system at the G.I. Joe team. First, they give us the name. Second, they give us a digital render. Third, they give us a final product shot as well as the pre-order. So we kind of know who's coming up in 2023. We got a list of like 20 names, and 5 of them are up for pre-order, 4 exclusives here, 4 exclusives there, that sort of thing. There's plenty coming in 2023, and we'll talk about that next year. But for now, let's look back at 2022 at G.I. Joe, looking at all 31 figures, particularly looking at the 26 I bought, and talking about the line as a whole. Let's begin. Starting it off with number 33, the B.A.T, also known as the Battle Android Trooper. This is one of the most iconic G.I. Joe designs, especially for the troop builders, and it's really nice to see it rendered in the Classified series so well. Every detail from the way the helmet is shaped to the way the coloring is done is just perfect. There even is an extra head that's battle damage where you can see the eye and part of the skull has been ripped open. It's really cool, and I love extra details like this. Also, the chest panel removes just like the vintage toy where you can see some mechanical detail underneath, and you can put a panel back on that has a hole punched in it. What also impressed me is that there's paint detail on the back, even with the backpack removed, which is just kind of really cool. Mechanical detail that's painted is always awesome. The Bat's weapons include a pistol that stores on the left leg. It of course comes with the interchangeable hand gimmick that the original toy did with the gripping claw here, the flamethrower arm, and the other laser blast arm. This means that you can configure the Bat into a final battle on its last limbs position, or a things are getting crazy so I'm going to go into combat, or just have the Bat in a more neutral robotic stance. Looking a little Robocop-y here. And that's the thesis statement for why I own 3 of these, because there's so many different options that each one can be displayed individually. And that makes the Bat a great Classified figure. Number 34, the Alley Viper. Now the Alley Viper's been teased since the beginning of the line. It's nice to finally see it in the lineup itself with this wonderful orange and blue color scheme. The head design is cool with this flip down visor. It of course comes with the iconic Alley Viper shield. The shield can rotate and there is a readout display on the inside, just like the original toy. The backpack's kind of interesting because it doesn't hold anything, it's just very techie looking. I dig it. There are a couple different holstered knives. One of them's on the arm here, and one of them's on the chest. There also is a pistol which holsters into the right leg, and it has kind of a generic design that we've seen in other Classified figures, but it works well for what it is. There are some new weapons included, such as this harpoon gun looking thing. It looks like a sniper rifle with a harpoon at the end. Another weapon which has a automatic rifle, and you can actually remove the magazine on this one. There's another rifle with a 2-handed grip that also has a removable magazine. Just like the Bat, the Alley Viper has a lot of options, maybe not as many as the Bat, but still makes it a really great figure that I'm glad to have multiples of. Number 35, Storm Shadow. One of the ones we've been waiting for since the line started. We previously had Arctic Mission Storm Shadow and Movie Storm Shadow, but the proper, more classic appearance is here. I love the head sculpt. He's got kind of a narrow, focused vision to him, which is really cool because it gives some expressiveness to a face that's mostly covered by a mask. Storm Shadow's backpack is also great, having 2 sheaths, a quiver, and a place to attach the bow. The bow itself does come with a detached arrow that clips into the bow, and it can be positioned, but the actual string part doesn't move, so it's a little awkward to get it to work right. He does come with, of course, the 2 swords, which is primarily how I'll be displaying this guy. And I do love that the sword handles are cobras. It really ties the whole look together. He also does come with an optional hood. He normally has the downed hood. This is the up hood. I don't think it looks that great, though. That being said, I think Storm Shadow is actually one of the best figures in the line. Despite not having too many options, outside of the 2 swords, there's not much else I really want him to do. Number 36, Spirit Iron Knife, along with Freedom. So Spirit here is one of the coolest G.I. Joe characters, and I love his modern redesign. The head sculpt is very intense, but it's got a lot of look to it. It has more realistic textures, and I love the way the hair has been done. And I like seeing the G.I. Joe comm device as a detail we don't get as much anymore. His backpack is very straightforward, and the rifle can attach to one side, which is awesome. And said rifle is a sniper rifle. He is supposed to be a tracker, so they added that kind of functionality to his design. There is a knife pocketed on his chest, which has a really, really cool holster to it. It has a bird-like design and has a really detailed blade, which is just really impressive on such a small size. There also is another more generic knife that stores in his boot. He does have a side holster pistol. This holster is one we've seen in a lot of figures. But the pistol is new because it does have an eagle design on the barrel, which I think is really, really cool. Now, of course, G.I. Joe has a ton of animals, and Freedom, the bald eagle, is no different. What's really cool is Freedom does have swappable wings. So having the option to have the wings splayed open as they are, or closed up, is pretty great. And this is just a beautiful paint job added to a wonderful black wash of the plastic to make a very nice eagle figure. Freedom can perch on Spirit's arm, nice and easy, to give him some information, or can perch on his backpack to be in a more of a tack position. Spirit is one of the coolest G.I. Joe characters, and including Freedom with him is great, and I think the updates done here is just an excellent job across the board. Number 37, the Cobra Officer. Now this figure is actually my favorite Cobra Trooper design. I really do like the way the Cobra Officer turned out. As you can see, it's not really reusing that much from the previous Cobra Infantry figure from last year. The harness is different, the chest is slightly different, the legs are reused, but the boots are different. There's a lot more new parts going on despite having the same silhouette. Looking at the head sculpt, he's got that bucket helmet design, also having that nice chest design, and I like the silver Cobra logo. You can also remove the helmet, of course, and it has nice painted details underneath. Now, in his belt are multiple different attachment points for his weapons, and the backpack can hold a holster, which is for one of the guns, this being the smaller one. Unfortunately, the smaller gun doesn't quite fit, and it will bend that ended nub if you're not careful. This smaller gun, which has an additional magazine, is kind of neat, but honestly, I don't like it that much. His larger weapon can also store in that same holster, and I much prefer this look for the Cobra Officer. It just seems to fit that kind of troop vibe that they have going on. It also does have an attachable scope, which is kind of hard to tell that it shouldn't be in there in the first place. I think it only removes because it wouldn't fit in the holster otherwise. There is a knife holstered on his leg, which is fairly generic, and there is a pistol holstered onto his hip. And this pistol has a Cobra-like design on the handle. And overall, it gives kind of a retro feel to the character, and I do like the overall look it has. In the end, just like the other army builders, lots of options, which means having multiples is not a problem if you want each figure to look unique. Cobra Officer is definitely a win in my book, and probably my favorite of the Cobra Troopers. Number 38, Croc Master and Fiona. This is the deluxe 2-pack set, and first of all, we're gonna look at Croc Master. He is one of the Cobra characters that is mostly forgotten, but still has a cool design. His head sculpt gives you kind of a Bane from DC Comics vibe, but I honestly do like it, and I like the Cobra logo emblazoned on the chest. I really love the eyeball belt buckle, especially because it has that nice, like, striking eye design to it. And I love the textures on the back. He's got kind of a croc skin thing going on, as well as that tank that works for his breathing apparatus. He has a knife stored in his boot, which he can hold and I think looks okay, but I don't really find myself using it that much. He also has a pistol stored on his left leg. And that pistol is pretty cool. It has a crocodile's texture to the handle, which I like to see that consistency here. He also comes with this hook, which came with the original toy. And he comes with this whip, which seems like an odd inclusion when you don't remember that he comes with a crocodile. And he comes with a chain for the crocodile, but let's talk about the real star, Fiona the Crocodile, a fully articulated 6-inch scale crocodile figure. Her mouth can open and her tail can bend. This is a fully featured crocodile figure. She even comes with little crocodile babies to ride on her back. This is just an excellent figure because it has every articulation point you'd need for a crocodile, and it fits with all your 6-inch figures. Croc Master and Fiona make a great set, even if Fiona totally steals the show. Number 39, Tiger Force Outback, who was released as a Target exclusive. Now this is a repaint of Outback, which we know the normal colors are coming later, and that's a great exclusive for Target to have. I love the head sculpt. It gives him sort of a Sam Neill from Jurassic World Dominion kind of vibe, and it is a good contrast to the upcoming sort of younger Outback we'll see in the main line. The tiger emblem on his chest is really well done, and I just think it's such a great detail to have to tie all the Tiger Force stuff together. What's also really impressive is he has arm hair detail painted on him. The G.I. Joe figures are really getting super detailed now. His backpack seems fairly generic, but I like the little pegs on the side to carry his rifle as well as his shovel. The shovel, which of course is perfect for wilderness explorers and survival experts, for reasons, and his actual main gun is pretty cool too, and I like the strap on it if you wanted to swing it over his shoulder. On one leg, he does have his flashlight, and he can hold it fairly well, but it does stretch the hand a little bit more than I'd like it to. In his boot, he has a knife stored, which is fairly generic, but Outback should have a knife if he's going to be a survivalist. He also has a pistol stored on his right hip, and that pistol looks pretty cool. It's a unique design, and I like the little wrapped bandages around the handle. So overall, Outback's pretty great. Lots of accessory options, which is good since there'll be 2 color schemes of this in the line. I'll have options to pose both versions in different ways. Number 41, the Python Patrol B.A.T, released as a Target exclusive. Once again, this is a recolor of a pre-existing character, which means it's a perfect exclusive to have for a store. And this one looks really cool. Yeah, the colors are wild, but I love the Python Patrol logo, I love the reds and the yellows. It clashes in the right way. As you can see, the Python Patrol B.A.T is pretty much identical to the regular B.A.T mold-wise. The regular B.A.T came with a battle-damaged head and a broken chest plate. The Python Patrol B.A.T does not include those. But the actual paint details inside the chest are different, which I thought was really interesting. There's not too much to say about the Python Patrol B.A.T that I didn't say with the B.A.T before, but it has all the same hand options you'd expect. And being able to wield those weapons makes the Python Patrol B.A.T look really cool. And I kind of like the idea of it being a specialist troop amongst the regular B.A.T troops. Like it is the kind of leader of that little squad, and actually that's probably how I'm going to display it. Number 42, the Python Patrol Cobra Viper, released as a Target exclusive. Another recolor that's not totally necessary for the main collections, and definitely is a better fit for an exclusive than the original Cobra Viper was. You can have, of course, the head with the goggles on top, or without the goggles. He comes with the same backpack the normal Cobra Viper came with. He has the same pistol, which stores in the leg, and of course you can hold, though I've always thought that pistol looks a little small. He also comes with the rifle that the normal Cobra Viper came with as well, and I think it looks great. And when you compare it to the previous Target exclusive Cobra Viper, you can see that they are basically the same figure, except this new one doesn't come with the scarf, and that's the only difference with the Python Patrol to the original mold-wise, but I think it makes a nice companion piece regardless. Number 43, Dr. Mindbender, releases a deluxe set for San Diego Comic-Con 2022. Now I wanted to show off the box because I think the box art is just gorgeous on this. It makes a nice companion to Serpentor as well. The back of the packaging having this whole story of how Dr. Mindbender created Serpentor is just an excellent piece of world building that ties everything together. And opening it up, you can see he comes with a ton of accessories, which is why he has that deluxe price point. Now that being said, he does seem like a fairly basic figure when you look at him like this, because he can't store most of his accessories on him. The head sculpt is done really well, and I think the monocle eye is definitely pulling the look together especially. Though unfortunately the cape does leave some black marks on the plastic. It just seems like whatever material they used had a bit of a rubbing feature to it, and that's something I'm going to go buff out later, but it is kind of a problem on a manufacturing level. On his right leg, he does have his pistol holstered. That pistol can be removed and of course used for evil. He comes with another more sci-fi gun. Looks less like an actual weapon and more like a science experiment thing. He also comes with another crazy weapon that comes with a tank that plugs onto his belt and a hose to connect it, and another variation of that looks sort of like fire suppressant. He also comes with these 2 containers. These 2 containers, of course, contain one that has a hand in it, and the other one has a brain in it. Kind of a cool, neat little feature to have for a lab display. What's also cool is the skull he includes can be opened up, and the brain from that other container can be totally put inside. And that's pretty awesome. So overall, Dr. Mindbender comes with a ton of accessories, including 4 little vials I couldn't get him to hold, so I didn't bother taking him out of the package. But did he need to be a deluxe price point? I'm not entirely certain, but I'd rather have the figure than try to wait for a regular retail release, though that may still happen in the future. Number 44, Tomax. Tomax is of course one half of the Crimson Guard twins. He has a roguish face with a little bit of a smile. He includes a dagger on his hip, perfectly balanced for throwing, and a dagger on his boot, a little too small for holding. Plus he comes with a multi-part weapon. Number 45, Xamot. Xamot is the other Crimson Guard twin. He has a scar on one eye to give him some distinction. He includes a dagger on his hip, perfectly balanced for throwing, and a dagger on his boot, a little too small for holding. Plus he comes with a multi-part weapon. The 2 twins are mirrors of each other, but not identical. I think it adds to the mystique of both of them. Careful attention was done to give them different expressions, as well as sweeping their hair in opposite directions, and I really think it turned out nice. Tomax and Xamot are the iconic twins, and this is the first time they've been sold separately, but what's really great is that they are unique figures in and of themselves. Number 46, Sgt Stalker. Stalker is one of the original G.I. Joe characters, and he's been a long time want for me in the line, and I'm glad to see him finally show up. He has a very intense expression on his face, which I think looks really great, as well as his beret, which pulls his iconic look together. Removing the beret, you can see he's got a standard military haircut. But there is a scar on one side, which adds to the lore of the character and how many battles he's been in. The scarf can also be removed to give him a more classic look, and I kind of prefer it this way. He has a back holster like the Cobra Officer, which holds one of his guns. And that gun is nothing too exciting, but it does have a removable magazine to it. Now on his holster, he has a device that looks like a walkie-talkie, but it actually plugs to the end of the gun barrel. I'm not sure the specifics on this because I'm not a gun guy. Definitely supposed to be attached to something because there is a barrel hole on the end of it. The other thing stored on that right leg is a pistol, and that pistol has a slightly deployed magazine, which I'm not, again, sure if that's a specific detail or if that's just something that they sculpted in for some reason. On the other hip, he has a knife, and that knife is a new design. The other gun he comes with is definitely the one I prefer, which is this larger weapon with a magazine. And you can remove that magazine, which is pretty cool. I've been waiting for Stalker to hit the line for a while, and I'm not disappointed. This definitely brings the whole look together of the character into a nice, modern, updated package. Number 47, the Cobra Officer and Vipers 3-pack. This is our first Trooper 3-pack, and it includes 2 Cobra Vipers, which have one minor difference between them, and I don't know if you noticed it yet. But yes, they actually do have different skin tones for the exposed neck, which I think is such a great detail. These could have been the exact same figure, but they gave them some distinction. There also is the Cobra Viper Officer, who is a completely different color scheme. And I like the gold being a signifier of rank, like this guy is in charge of all the Vipers. This set includes a ton of accessories, and I could go into them one by one and go over each detail, but that would take a long time, so we're just gonna look at these overview here. And since a lot of these are duplicated from the original Cobra Viper. What's new is blast effects and muzzle flashes, which we have not seen in the line so far, and it's really exciting to see these. And these work pretty well outside of the ones that got kind of warped due to the plastic-free packaging. But honestly, I like ones that are smaller and kind of have like a little action to them. And I really like the one with the smoke coming out of the barrel because it kind of adds to a standstill frozen state. Also, these muzzle flashes can be used with other figures in the line, so that gives you more range of option, and it really makes me want more of these released outside of this Trooper pack. Overall, getting 3 Vipers all at once was pretty great. I didn't find myself buying multiples of these because I felt like I have plenty of options within, and a lot of these weapons and effects can be used with other figures, which means it was a worthwhile purchase for my collection. Number 48, Zarana. Now, Zarana is Zartan's sister and is one of the more iconic G.I. Joe characters, especially if you read Larry Hama's G.I. Joe comic. To go alongside that, she has the hair swapping gimmick that Lady J came with. So the first hair option is this cool pink mullet. I really like this, it's got an 80s vibe to it, it's really fun. The other hair option's a little bit more contained and a little more natural. It's not so out there, but hey, you got preferences here. Her backpack contains this really cool knife that has a nice heated blade that gives it sort of a really visceral edge. But if you want a normal knife, there's one on her leg, which she can hold, but it's not nearly as exciting. Her best weapon is this machine gun / buzzsaw thing. And that also has a removable magazine, which seems to be just a built-in G.I. Joe feature at this point. Zarana is great. I love the look, the vibe, the style. She just makes for an excellent figure in this line. Number 49, Dusty. Dusty was a character the 2000s pushed a lot, so I have a lot of nostalgia for this guy, even though he's not usually a major player. But he is well known enough, especially with his really goofy looking head. The helmet never has worked in toy form. But you can remove it, and they gave him a nice haircut underneath. I do think the stripe detail on his face is also really well done, even if a little bit of it bled onto the hair. But that might be more realistic. I also do like the labels for his name and the G.I. Joe team on the chest, because that's a kind of detail we don't usually see. We don't usually see text written out. He does come with a pair of goggles that fit on his head, that don't fit on the helmet, and there's ones for the helmet. Which means if you want to double goggle this guy, you totally have that choice. His backpack's pretty cool, but pretty standard. It doesn't really hold anything. But he does have a knife in his boot, which I've said a lot. As far as knives go, it's a knife. He also includes a rifle with a removable magazine, and he can hold it with 2 hands, which is pretty neat. What's also cool is it has the kickstand, so it can be used in a sniper position. Overall, Dusty's a pretty good figure, though I kind of wish he had a couple more weapon options. He does feel a little bit lacking compared to some of the others like Stalker. Number 50, the Crimson Guard. The Crimson Guard were brought in by Tomax and Xamot. They run the Crimson Guard, and they are excellent troop builders, especially following up one wave after the twins. I love the head sculpt design. The Crimson Guard have always had a great look, and once again, silver Cobra logos. There's something about that. The backpack's pretty cool. It looks like it'd hold a bunch of stuff, but it is just kind of a hunk of plastic, but it does hold the rifle and the sword. Speaking of the rifle, it has a bayonet on the end of it, which is unique for this figure compared to others, and I really like the way it looks. It also has a removable magazine. I really like that that's becoming a feature. It's a really cool, detailed thing. The sheath for the sword can plug onto the backpack or the hip, and you can have the Crimson Guard with that sort of saber look to it. I think that always kind of gave the Crimson Guard more distinction. You can also see the Cobra-handled knife fitted into the waist holster, and it's honestly a cool look for such a small weapon. There also is a pistol in the other hip, and that pistol's pretty cool. I think the handle's supposed to be Cobra textured, but I'm not exactly sure. The Crimson Guard just go with another line of really great troop builders this year, and I'm happy to have 3 of them because there's a lot of options to pose them in different ways. Number 51, the Blue Ninjas, releases an Amazon exclusive 2-pack. So the Blue Ninjas 2-pack contains one Blue Ninja who's a repaint of the previous Red Ninja, and he contains one face that has kind of red eyes, which sort of gives me the robot look of what the Blue Ninjas were in the Larry Hama comic. But he also comes with this really cool Oni mask that's definitely my preference in this situation. There also is a female Blue Ninja who reuses the Akiko body from the G.I. Joe movie line, and she features a new head, once again with those whited out eyes, which means I think they went with the robot idea that Larry Hama introduced. And she has a fox mask option, which looks really cool, especially with the Cobra logo right in the center. This 2-pack comes with pretty much every weapon we saw before. Most of this came from the Arctic Mission Storm Shadow, with some of this coming from the Snake Eyes Deluxe set. This means you can give them plenty of options, and if you bought multiple multi-packs, you could definitely have a more unique set of Blue Ninjas. For me, 2 was enough. Number 52 is the new Snake Eyes and Timber 2-pack. Similar to the one previous year, this is a new 2-pack, but it is mostly reuse. Timber's in white now instead of gray, which I prefer the gray, and Snake Eyes comes with a bunch of weapons, and he's in that more modern style that sort of matches the deluxe release from the beginning of the line. And since I have that, this set was definitely not needed for my collection, but it's a good entry point for people just getting into the line. Number 53, Sgt Slaughter, releases a fan channel exclusive. Sgt Slaughter here looks great. This was a surprise figure because Sgt Slaughter himself introduced it. The likeness to Sarge is pretty solid. You can just see him yelling at you, telling you to drop and give him 50, maggot. And you can also remove his hat and glasses, but somehow he looks more pissed off than before, so I think we'll put him back on. Now, Sgt Slaughter doesn't need many weapons besides his arms, so he comes with a bunch of different hand options. He's got pointing hands for one direction, pointing hands for the other direction, grappling hands so he can wrestle with one of those cobras. He also comes with his training stick, which I realize is probably not the name, and Sarge is definitely looking to correct me on that. He does come with a rifle. It's the same as the one that came with the Cobra Officer. But most importantly, he comes with a tiny action figure version of himself. This tiny action figure can be removed from the card back, which I will not do because it is tiny, but looks amazing. You can just see Sgt Slaughter looking to sell you a G.I. Joe in one of the commercials, and I love that the entire history of the character is brought together in one figure. Number 57, Serpentor and his Air Chariot, releases a Hasbro Pulse exclusive to tie in with PulseCon 2022. Now, I did a full review of Serpentor, which you can find on my channel. I definitely recommend checking that out because I went into every little detail. The short version is that this is a great figure that interacts well with the rest of the line. He's got a lot of details, a lot of options, really great sculpting and paint work, and he just looks really impressive at the size they built him at, being taller than all the other figures. And adding to that, he just seems to be a great figure with a great release, and hopefully a version of Serpentor without the Air Chariot will be available for those that couldn't get this set. It's also kind of interesting because the main villain Cobra characters from the cartoon have all been made now, so I'm curious to see where the line goes next. Number 61, Kamakura, releases an Amazon exclusive. Now, this figure was at a higher price point, but I think that's because he has a lot of new parts to him, even if he has some reused weapons. There's some additional painted detail, like the Arashikage tattoo on his arm, as well as the extra sculpted detail on his hand. This is the kind of detail that's exclusive to this design of Kamakura, which I'm not sure could be reused unless they have like a Blue Ninja situation. He does have a new head. It's not reused from Storm Shadow, which is great, but he does have that same down hood piece that Storm Shadow had. And he has an up hood, which I don't like very much at all. He also comes with an unmasked head, which is just Sean Collins without the Kamakura mask, which I think is great because the character has had a lot of history being unmasked as well. And in fact, the hood kind of makes more sense with the unmasked head. I've never really understood wearing a full head mask and then putting a hood over that. My preference is the masked Kamakura without the hood piece at all, because it kind of balances out his neck proportions better. He does have two swords, which are sheathed on his back, and those two swords are pretty great. I like that one has a green band to kind of show the primary sword. He does come with two other swords, which are reused from the movie Akiko figure, and the combined staff version from that same Akiko. He does come with the same Uzi that Snake Eyes came with, which, being the student of Snake Eyes who later takes up the mantle, is appropriate. He also comes with that pistol that Snake Eyes had. So Kamakura has a lot of unique parts to him, which kind of explains the higher price, and then the overall weapons that he comes with are good and can be distributed around your different ninjas. So honestly, one of my favorite figures of the year. Now the last 4 figures we're talking about are sold on retro cards exclusive to Walmart, and they're meant to invoke the original 80s toys. The first retro is Baroness. This is really good because her classified version before, exclusive to Target, was really hard to get. So this is definitely an improvement for distribution. For me, I didn't really need it because she's not too much improved over the previous Baroness. Same story goes for Lady J. While her figure's more common and more available, this is definitely a more vintage looking one, especially with the hat details, but for me personally, I didn't really need it. And hey, I may be a huge Destro fan, but I don't need every toy of him. This one is more retro inspired, and I think it's going to satisfy the people that felt like the original Destro was too modern, which wasn't a problem for me. The one I did get, however, was Gung Ho, because he has a complete reworking of his design. Looking at Gung Ho here, he's definitely in that bright 80s colors with the really weird turquoise look. I love it. It's very much Gung Ho. He's got the hat that's too small, the vest that definitely couldn't close over his torso even if he tried. It's definitely more retro Gung Ho. And when you compare it to the previous Gung Ho, you can see they reused the arms, the torso, and the legs, but they actually did change the head sculpt. As you can see, they actually put the proper mustache, they gave him the scar on the chin, they made him completely bald compared to the previous one. In fact, these two can coexist on the display as different characters in my eyes. The backpack for Gung Ho is very classic looking and very, very bright. He has a pistol holstered on one leg, which he can hold, but it looks a little small for him. And he has a knife holstered in a boot, which I promise is the last time I'm going to say that this video. And it's a knife. I don't know what else to say at this point. But more appropriate to Gung Ho, he has a very large gun that has a shoulder strap on it. He also does come with a stand, which I wish more figures came with, because this allows you to do some dynamic posing, because it does have strong pegs to it, or just in general, make the figures more stable. If Hasbro would sell me stands and blast parts, it would be great. But overall, retro Gung Ho was definitely worth getting for someone like me that wanted more of a classic look on the character. Alright, here's my top 10 of 2022. It was difficult, but this is the list. Number 10, Zarana. Number 9, the Cobra B.A.T. Number 8, Outback. Number 7, Tomax and Xamot. Number 6, the Cobra Officer. Number 5, Spirit. Number 4, Fiona and Croc Master. Number 3, Kamakura. Number 2, Sgt Slaughter. And of course, number 1, Serpentor. So that does it for my G.I. Joe 2022 rundown. I did like a lot of things about this year. I loved the Trooper multi-packs. I loved the new Target branding being Tiger Force and Python Patrol. Took a lot of pressure off that line because it's not doing the thing Cobra Island did where it's our first run on some of these characters. It's second versions, and even if we got like Outback first, we already know regular Outback is coming, which means the forthcoming Bazooka and Rakondo are going to get their normal versions too. It just seems like the most logical thing. We're getting the variants first, and I think that's totally fine. I'm really looking forward to G.I. Joe Classified in 2023. The rundown next year should be fun, trying to fit the HISS tank into this. Just really jazzed about what's coming up, especially Shipwreck. That's like my most anticipated figure of 2023. So G.I. Joe Classified still going strong. Even if we don't have any media support for G.I. Joe as a brand, if this line keeps rolling along, even if it has to go online exclusive, which is happening in some territories, I'll take it. This is one of the best action figure lines Hasbro's putting out, and one of the best they've ever put out. And I hope this team gets to continue doing what they do as long as they can. This won't last forever, but at least for now, I'm enjoying it more than any other Hasbro line, and that's why I wanted to kick this off for this year's rundowns. So like I said, there will be more rundowns this year. Marvel Legends is coming up. Power Rangers Lightning Collection and Transformers Legacy are coming up in the next month. So hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. While you're there, hit the like button if you haven't already. Leave a comment if you haven't already, and tell me what you think is the most exciting G.I. Joe Classified figure for 2023. On that note, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Soundout12. Check me out live on Mondays at 5 p.m. Eastern here on this YouTube channel where we talk about toys all the time. Also be sure to check out Hero Club at hero-club.com for toy news and more, and my awesome graphic designer on Twitter at darkclaw643. And until next time, this is Soundout saying, Yo Joe!